A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Hi, this is StrategyCast, where smart marketers and bold business thinkers share the plays behind brand breakthroughs. I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications. And today we've got a solo cast for you. We're diving into a topic that I think might be one of the most important strategic conversations marketers need to be having right now, because something fundamental has shifted in markets. Trust, which for decades was kind of the default setting, is no longer a starting point. Today, trust is the competitive advantage. Now think about that for a minute. There was a time when a company could launch a campaign, tell a compelling story, repeat the message enough times, and eventually the market would accept the narrative. But that environment is gone. It's long gone. Today, buyers are skeptical. They are cautious, and in many cases, they assume the opposite of what brands are saying until proven otherwise. And that shift has massive implications for how we think about marketing strategy. Because if trust is no longer the default condition, then marketing cannot simply be about storytelling anymore. Marketing has to become something much more structured. It has become what Avocet considers, and what we've developed as a company, a trust architecture. And that's something we're going to unpack today. We're going to talk about why trust has changed and what the data is showing us about how buyers think today, and most importantly, what marketing leaders should actually do about it. So if you're diving into strategy inside your company, you're going to want to take some notes today, because this is a real meaty one. Let's start with the big shift, and this one is truly fascinating. The Edelman Trust Barometer recently revealed that 7 in 10 people globally are hesitant or unwilling to trust someone who is different from them. 7 in 10. That is a huge number. Now, that is a profound change in the psychology of trust. Edelman refers to this as an insular trust mindset. And what that means in practical terms is this: trust no longer begins at neutral. It begins at skepticism. Buyers today are not entering the market asking, which company should I choose? They are entering the market asking very different questions. They're asking, who benefits from this? What are they hiding? Why should I believe them? And if your marketing cannot answer those questions quickly and clearly, the buyer's default assumption is not curiosity, it is doubt. Now, this is where a lot of traditional marketing approaches start to break down, because storytelling alone is not enough. Stories are powerful. I love storytelling. Storytelling is a huge part of brand strategy and what this agency delivers day in and day out. But stories create interest. They don't automatically create trust. Trust requires something else. Trust requires evidence. So the job of marketing today is no longer just to tell a story. The job is to prove a story. Now let's talk about another shift that is really shaping how people interpret information. The Edelman data shows that only 39% of people engage weekly with information sources that challenge their beliefs. That number is incredibly important, because what it means is that people are increasingly operating inside what we refer to as belief bubbles. Your audience is not simply comparing vendors, they're comparing worldviews. And when that happens, something interestingly occurs in marketing. repetition, which used to be one of the primary tools for building brand recognition and trust, starts to lose its effectiveness. In fact, repetition without proof can actually increase skepticism. So that bubble just becomes larger, the percentage in it does. If someone hears the same claim over and over again, but never sees credible evidence behind it, their reaction is not belief. It's suspicion, it's disbelief. So the marketing equation today looks different. It's no longer about cleverness. It's about clarity, consistency, and proof. Clarity so people understand what you actually do, consistency so they recognize patterns of behavior, and proof so they can verify that the claims are real. Now, here's another fascinating shift. Trust is moving away from institution toward individuals. People today often trust coworkers, employees, engineers, and CEOs more than they trust government, media, and large institutions, NGOs included. Think about that shift. Trust is becoming relational. It's becoming local. And that has enormous implications on marketing strategy because it means most powerful voices in your organization may not be the brand itself. They might be your founder, your engineers, your frontline employees, your customers, your operators. These are just the people who carry the credibility. And what we're seeing across markets right now is that organizations that allow those voices to surface authentically and transparently often create far stronger trust signals than brands that speak only through polished corporate messaging. So the strategic question becomes, who inside your organization carries credibility, and how are you enabling those voices to participate in the market conversation? Another insight from the Edelman research that I think marketers need to pay very, very close attention to is the widening trust gap between economic groups. Since 2012, the difference in trust levels between high-income and lower-income audiences has more than doubled. Lower-income audiences are significantly more likely to believe that the system is rigged, institutions benefit elites, business primarily serves the wealthy. Now think about that and what that means for messaging. The exact same marketing message can't land in two completely different ways depending on the audience's economic outlook and their baseline level of trust, which means segmentation can't rely on demographics anymore. We have to start thinking about trust segmentation. How much does this audience trust institutions? How optimistic are they about economic mobility? How fair do they believe the system is? Because if you ignore those dynamics, you may unintentionally trigger skepticism even where your message is well intended. So what actually does build trust? Now, here's something that Edelman data makes very clear. Trust is not built through messaging alone. Trust is built through visible behavior. People trust companies that demonstrate competence, fairness, community investment, responsibility. In other words, trust is not created when a company says, "Trust us." As a matter of fact, that's an incredibly poor idea. This is where the concept of trust architecture comes in. This is a program Avocet has been working on for the last 24 months because every buyer, consciously or subconsciously, is trying to answer 3 questions when they evaluate a company. Question 1, is this real? Question 2, does it work? And question 3, why should I believe them? Now, those questions sound simple, but answering them convincingly requires structure. And that's where our trust architecture comes into play and what it provides. Trust architecture is a system for organizing credibility across the company. It aligns several key elements into coherent structure: positioning, messaging, product evidence, leadership voice, customer validation. When those elements are aligned, the market receives a clear and consistent signal. When they are not aligned, buyers experience confusion, and confusion erodes trust incredibly quickly. So the trust architecture is essentially the discipline of designing how credibility shows up in the market, not just in campaigns, but across an entire system of communication. Now, let me bring this to life with a real-world example. One company we worked with, Aircraft Performance Group, operates in a highly technical industrial category. Now, companies in technical industries often face a unique challenge. It's not always visibility, it's credibility. When buyers encounter an industrial or engineering company, the questions they are asking tend to be very pragmatic. Are the people legitimate? Do they really solve the problem? Are they better than the incumbent solution? So the first step in building trust architecture was not writing marketing language, it was identifying the truth of the company. What are the engineering strengths? What manufacturing capabilities exist? What real-world performance data is available? That's the credibility foundation. From there, we structured the proof across 3 layers. The first layer is product truth: specification, performance metrics, engineering capability. The second layer is operational truth: manufacturing capacity, supply chain reliability, delivery performance. And the third layer, market proof: customer success, industry validation, and real-world outcomes. Once those layers of proof were clear, marketing, in this case Avocet, could translate them into a market language through messaging, website architecture, sales enablement tools, brand narrative, so on and so forth. The difference was that the message wasn't just persuasive, it was supported by evidence, and that dramatically changes how buyers interpret the brand. So why does all this matter right now? Because the Edelman data reveals something very important about the next decade of markets. Trust is becoming the primary filter for information. If buyers trust you, they listen. If they don't, nothing you say matters. Not your messaging, not your campaign, not even your product advantages. Trust determines whether the market is willing to hear your story in the first place. And that's why marketing strategy has to evolve. For decades, we optimized marketing for awareness. Then we optimized it for engagement. Now we must optimize it for credibility. So let me leave you with this thought. For a long time, trust was considered the outcome of marketing. If the campaign worked, trust followed. But that relationship has reversed. Today, trust is the foundation of marketing. It's the infrastructure that determines whether your story is believed. And the companies that win in the next decade will not simply have the best products, they will have the clearest systems for making their credibility visible. That's what our trust architecture is designed to do, and that's exactly what we'll continue exploring in this series. If you found this conversation valuable, I'd love to hear from you. You can always reach out to me at Lori@StrategyCast.com. And I'd encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn as well, Lori Sartorius Jones. And of course, don't forget to sign up for the StrategyCast Newsletter, where we will break down insights from each episode and give you frameworks that you can apply immediately. Thanks for joining me today. And until next time, let's keep building marketing that actually drives growth.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.